Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome tonight. We are celebrating the launch of Uzma Jalaluddin's Hana Khan Carries On. I'm Jennifer Lambert from HarperCollins Canada, and I'm going to introduce Uzma to you all in just a moment. But first, I'd like to read our land acknowledgement. Though virtually connected, we'd like to acknowledge that our meeting is hosted on Indigenous land and dish with one spoon territory. This is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. HarperCollins Canada gratefully acknowledges these Indigenous nations for their guardianship of this land. So again, I'm so thrilled to be here and to welcome you all to this really special evening. This novel has been a little while in the making, and it is a follow-up to Uzma's debut novel, Aisha at Last. Some of you may be familiar with that book, and it was something that we were incredibly excited to publish and got fantastic reviews and sales and wonderful fans around the world, and was optioned by some very high-profile people at Sony Pictures, and that's very much in the works to be happening in the days and months ahead. And so now, Hana Khan Carries On is Uzma's new novel, which again brings us joy and light and happiness and romance, while also touching on the issues of our time. So Uzma, I'm going to quote you in your own words in this fantastic Toronto Star article that you wrote this weekend that really encapsulates this book. And it says, you said, "I choose to write happy, funny stories as a light against darkness. I use humor as a way to talk about the hard things, such as family dysfunction, the pain of loneliness, or lack of belonging. Writing funny is not easy, but people in my community need to see themselves represented as warm, loving beings worthy of happy endings." Uzma, HarperCollins couldn't be more proud to be your publishers and to be launching this book with you into the world. You are going to find so many fans, and all of you here tonight are in for such a treat to hear from Uzma and also from all of her high-profile special guests who are going to be adding their own magic to the evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Uzma, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Jennifer, thank you so much for that really wonderful introduction. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining me tonight. I have a little speech prepared. I have practiced this, so I hope I don't mess up. Okay, here we go. First of all, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Uzma Jalaluddin. Thank you so much for joining me today for the launch of Hana Khan. Usually, I would try to start off my book, a book launch with a joke. But since this book launch is for a Muslim romantic comedy, I guess the joke is on me. Because seriously, isn't that an oxymoron? Isn't Muslim and comedy the definition of juxtaposition of contrast? Muslims aren't funny. We're scary and dangerous, and maybe we need to be pitied. Yet both my first novel, Aisha at Last, and now my second novel, Hana Khan Carries On, which we are launching into the world today, are funny and sweet and light, and they stand in stark contrast to the way that Muslims, South Asians, and first and second generation immigrants are usually portrayed, and I couldn't be prouder today. I try to write stories that are centered in a community that I'm a part of, a community that has, I am sorry to say, been done dirty by others. Sometimes I wonder why I do it. Seriously, shouldn't I write stories about my people and shouldn't I write serious stories about my people and my culture? There are certainly a lot of serious things to write about, but what can I say? Comedy is in my blood. Blame my parents or maybe my Hyderabadi sense of humor. Hyderabad is the city in India where my parents immigrated from. And Hyderabadis think that they are the funniest people in the world and also the best dressed. Of course, we are right on both counts. Every book has an origin story, and here's mine for Hana Khan. Hana Khan Carries On came to life at Affy's restaurant in Ajax, Ontario. Shout out to Affy's. It was the product of a birthday celebration way back in 2017. Yes, I started writing it before Aisha at Last was published. It's taken a while. My husband and I were out for dinner. Remember when we used to do those things, go out for dinner? And I think I ordered the ribs. He definitely ordered the steak. I think we split the brownie dessert, and there might have been non-alcoholic margaritas involved. We were really living it up. I remember I looked around the restaurant and thought, this is a nice place. One that never really existed when my husband and I were growing up in the 80s and 90s in Toronto. And I wonder what it would be like to write about the way that food culture is actually a shorthand for identity and belonging in a city like Toronto, as diverse as Toronto. And boom, just like that, the idea for Hana Khan Carries On was born. As a child of the 90s, I grew up watching all the classic rom-coms, like While You Were Sleeping, Notting Hill, and of course, You've Got Mail. And in that moment, inside a nice halal steakhouse in the East End of Toronto, I had a bolt of inspiration. And I just knew that it was my destiny to make halal food great again. Just kidding. But not really. Remember, this was 2017. A lot of things weren't great, and they were weighing on me. I'm sure they were weighing on a lot of us. I was angry when I wrote this book, I have to be honest. There were a few times when I was drafting it that I had to remind myself that I was writing a romantic comedy. In fact, that's how Rashid came into the picture, by the way. He's Hannah's 18-year-old cousin who visits from India, and he steals every single scene he's in. But there were other parts of this book that were really hard to write. And when you read it, you'll know what I mean. There are moments when Hannah doubts herself. She is 24 years old, the daughter of working class immigrants from India. She's young, she wears hijab, her family has no safety net, and she desperately wants to succeed in her career, which is broadcasting. She also really wants to see her family find success in the restaurant that they have been running for over 15 years. But everything is falling apart. And Hannah has to fight her way through pain and anger and the change that is happening all around her. That's what this story is about. How to find your voice, how to find your purpose, how to believe that things will get better even when your world is on fire. But don't worry, it's also a love story. It's also about falling in love. Aiden is the Tom Hanks to Hannah's Meg Ryan. He opens up a hipster halal diner down the street from Hannah's family restaurant inside the fictional Golden Crescent neighborhood. And this diner is in direct contrast to Hana Khan's family's Indian restaurant. And from their very first interaction, they are off to the races. Two young Muslims who fall in love under extraordinary circumstances. There are a lot of other fun characters in my second book. I tend to write a lot of characters because, I don't know, I guess they all live in my head and they need to come out. Such as her mom, her dad, her sister Fazila, her brother-in-law Fahim, Thomas, Big J, Lily, Yusuf, and of course, one of my favorite characters, her sarcastic aunt, Gokab Khala. Fun fact, Gokab Khala's story is actually based on a personal family member. So she actually existed in real life. Yep, Bari Billy was a real person. Hana Khan Carries On is a love letter to Toronto. There's even an important scene that happens in the CN Tower. I guess I'm just following in the footsteps of Drake and repping the six. My book is all about community, about found family, and because I grew up in a close-knit one, and I know how important that is. I have a few people to thank before we move on to the fun and games part of the night. First off, I want to thank my amazing agent, Anne Collette. This would have been a very different book if it wasn't for her guidance. Believe me, guys, I was going in different directions. I also want to thank my outstanding editor at HarperCollins, Jennifer. Thank you so much. You have the best suggestions and advice. Thank you for everything you've done. Also, thank you to the whole team at HarperCollins Canada for their support, their cheerleading every step of the way. Thank you, Alice, my publicist, for putting this launch together and for keeping me organized. I also want to thank my US publishers, Berkeley Books, for all of their enthusiasm and passion for Hana Khan Carries On. A big thank you in particular to my US editor, Cindy Wong, Angela, Farida, and my amazing US publicist, Jessica. Huge thanks also to my UK publisher, Atlantic Books, my editor, Susanna Hamilton, and the rest of the team. Now I need to thank my own personal community. Thank you to my husband, Imtiaz, He's always supported me. He's always told me the truth, even when he should know better. Thanks to my kids for putting up with having a very busy and distracted mom. Thank you to my parents, Muhammad and Uzma Jalaluddin. I know you're watching. Hi, Mom. Shout out to my brother Atif and my mother-in-law Fozia and the rest of my family who are spread out all over the GTA, in the United States, India, Saudi, across the world. Thank you so much for watching tonight. And thank you so much for supporting me. I also want to thank my good friends who are also watching tonight, I hope. I wanted to let you know that our group chats sometimes are the only thing that are keeping me going. And a huge shout out to my fellow teachers who are kicking it and trying to survive. I appreciate you all. You're all doing so much work. Big thanks to my writer friends, some of whom we will be hearing from a little later on tonight. I'm so excited. I can't believe they all said yes. And finally, to my readers, my book lovers, my reviewers, bloggers on every single platform. There's more every day. Thank you for talking about my books. Thank you for leaving reviews, for buying copies. Thank you for showing with your money and your time that these stories matter. Please spread the word about my book and the books of all my friends who are going to be speaking with us today. And it really helps if you review. This goes for everyone. Yes, Dad, even you. Please read and review my book on Goodreads, Amazon, etc. It really helps. I'm sure I've left someone out, but you have to forgive me because this is my launch party and I'm a little nervous. But thank you for being here. Let the fun begin. Okay, so I think we are headed into so Shannon is going to be speaking next. I thought it would be really fun if I asked a few of my writer friends to share some stories about food. So Shannon Chakraborty will be speaking first. She's going to be sharing a food story. And since I'd like this to be a little bit interactive, at the end of her food story, she'll be asking you all a question. So pay attention. She'll be asking a question and whoever gets the right answer and types it in first into the chat will win a giveaway. And the giveaway is a signed copy of Hana Khan Carries On and a little bit of swag, including some fan art, some bookmarks and things like that. This giveaway is open to Canadian and US readers. So Shannon Chakraborty is the author of the critically acclaimed and internationally best-selling Daivabad trilogy. Her work has been nominated for the Locus, World Fantasy, Crawford, and Astounding Awards. She's also a super cool person, and her books are amazing. Shannon, so excited to hear your food story.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight to celebrate this amazing book. I got an early copy in December, even though I am technically a fantasy writer and had no right. And I loved it. It was like a warm hug. I think I read it in a day. So everybody should buy it because it's hysterical and it's warm and it's just amazing. So when I got invited to talk about food, of course I joined. I love food. I mean, who doesn't love food? But since I've been young, I was always very interested in culinary history. I think food and the preparation of meals and how it's done, the traditions of serving it, sharing it, it's probably one of the few human experiences that unites us all. And I've always been really interested in the different ways that works throughout history. We see, in how ingredients are introduced and how they're changed, how certain preparations stand throughout the test of time. One of the things I'm very interested in particular is the cuisine of the medieval Islamic world. We have a lot of great recipe books from that time because it was sort of, one of the high class things to do was to have these culinary competitions. And it's fascinating because many of these recipes and traditions stretch on even longer. They come from pre-Islamic Persia. So I love these recipes. I like to do recreations of them and share them on Twitter and social media. Sort of the more out there and difficult, the better. But when I got invited to this, that was not the first meal that I thought of. I thought of probably one of the most simple meals I've ever prepared, which is your basic spaghetti and meatballs. I am a convert to Islam, and that is a change in my life that has brought a lot of blessings and wonderful things, and it's also been a challenge. And one of the challenges I would not have quite expected revolves around food. Because I come from a very close, tight-knit, extended family. My family is Irish and Italian American. Catholic for like 2,000 years. And I don't think I realized until after I converted to Islam how many of our traditions revolved around food that revolved around religious holidays, right? I mean, you have the 7 fishes during Christmas. You know, since I was young, my aunt made a point. I would go to her house and sleep over, and we'd make strufeli, these like little fried balls of cholesterol. My grandmother makes her grandmother's pani de Pascua for Easter. My mother makes her nanny's, you know, soda bread for St. Patrick's Day. And it's, you know, it's the preparation of these things and the continuing of making these dishes and serving them and having the warmth of, you know, the women in my family. And when I converted, I felt so guilty because again, I was still partially Catholic. We do that well. And it was, you know, can I enjoy these things? Should I not enjoy these things? Am I, you know, betraying my family? Am I betraying my new community? And I was a mess. And bizarrely, about 10 years ago, I started attending this masjid in Brooklyn. And it was very small enough that we would have dinners on Saturday night. And it was a small enough group that we could cook all, you know, all together. One person would bring a meal. And I brought a meal one time and I didn't do any of my fancy dishes. Instead, I made spaghetti and meatballs. You know, it feeds a crowd. But I made, you know, I used my grandmother's Sunday sauce recipe, adapted it to be halal. My mother's meatball recipe, which is the best ones you will ever have in your life. And I made it and I brought it, and I cannot tell you the peace I felt. It was so bizarre over spaghetti and meatballs, but I just felt, I can still remember 10 years on sitting there and just feeling like I had brought two parts of my life and my identity together. And it was definitely a start of some healing that I had needed. To the point that just last week, actually, I made pani di Pasqua, which is this Italian Easter bread. My grandmother, it's her grandmother's recipe. It's about 100 years old. And I was the only person she gave it to because she trusted to make it. So I made it for the first time. I felt like, you know, we braid it together with eggs. So it totally has these pagan roots that I won't tell her because she'll get angry at me. And there was a bit of, you know, there's some profound meaning in like, I'm a Muslim making this Catholic bread with pagan roots. But I just felt like I had gotten to a point in my life I felt comfortable with that and comfortable with bringing my culture and my heritage and traditions to my religious community. And though the bread did not come out great, maybe my ancestors didn't quite approve, I really felt at peace with it. So that is my food story. And I talk very fast. So if any of you were able to catch one of the dishes I mentioned, the first person will get the reward. So you have to, oh, pani de Pasqua. Okay, that was fast. So, Amani, you win. But that is my food story. So thank you for joining me. Please support this book. Give it to all your friends because it is great. And it is the book we all need to feel slightly happy during pandemic times. Thank you so much for having me. And I am giving it back over to the next person. Bye.
Oh my God, Shannon, that was hilarious. That was an awesome story. Thank you so much for sharing. I actually should have said at the top of the event. Hana Khan Carries On, signed copies of Hana Khan Carries On will be available. Alice, I think you'll be making a little announcement about that, where people can actually purchase both in Canada and the United States signed copies of my book. And in addition, I'm really happy to say that all of my my writer friends who will be speaking today, their amazing, excellent, fantastic books are also available for sale. And I believe in Toronto, it can be shipped across the country. It's Ben McNally Books, and in the US, it's with Belmont Books. So you can order my books, you can order Shannon, Uzma's, Sajida, and of course Huda's books as well. But more details about that later. Shannon, that was awesome. Now I kind of want to make spaghetti and meatballs too. And I didn't get the name of that bread, but that sounds delicious. I remember you tweeted about this too. Okay, so up next, I'm going to read a little bit of Hana Khan Carries On. This is actually from the very beginning of the book, and everyone who's here today, this is the first time that I'm reading from my book out loud. Usually by the time you finish doing a couple of events, you have a couple of favorite passages. So I was reading over and looking over my book and trying to think of what to read. And so I just thought, you know what? It's the book launch. The book is not even out in the United States. It just came out in Canada. I'm going to read the beginning of the book. And then we will move on to our next guest speaker, who's going to be Huda Fehmi. Okay, so Hana Khan Carries On. This is the very first page. If you have a copy, you can follow along. Here are the rules. So I should say the very first chapter of Hana Khan Carries On is Hana herself narrating in a podcast. So she is a broadcaster in training. I love podcasts. I'm a huge fan. And so she basically is narrating. It's a transcript from a podcast that she does. And this is the conceit of the novel, where basically the conceit of the novel is that this is an anonymous podcast that Hana starts, and she has her very first supporter, who is Stanley P. Of course, he's a little bit more familiar than that. All right, here we go. Here are the rules. This is a single person podcast, not a variety show, no interviews, not a comedy hour. I'm not going to tell you my name or any specific biographical details except the following. I'm a South Asian Muslim woman in my 20s. I was born and live in the city of Toronto, and I love radio, really love it. I also love the free form of podcasts. This particular podcast will be about having a place to ask questions without worrying who might be listening and judging. I'm talking about the big questions, future friends, such as, what do you want out of life? What do we owe the people we love? How do our histories and stories influence who we become? And how do you know that the thing you want is actually the thing you want? There you have it, listeners, my mission statement. I promise no frills and a clear voice. I promise nothing of substance and nothing but my truth. I promise to take this seriously, but I'm also definitely making it up as I go along. Whoever and wherever you are, welcome to Anna's Brown Girl Rambles. I can't wait to start a conversation with you. And then she goes on and she has a little conversation with Stanley P. And basically this opening chapter from Hana Khan Carries On really encapsulates what the whole book is about. And throughout the whole book, that's really what she's asking. She's answering these big questions. What do you want out of life? What do we owe the people we love? How do our histories and stories influence who we become? And how do you know that the thing you want is actually the thing you want? And she spends the rest of the book answering some of these questions. I'm going to read a little bit from an excerpt a few pages down, because I think we have a little bit of time. So Hana Khan is an intern at a radio station, and then later on, she also works at her mother's Indian restaurant. So this is the first interaction in her mother's Indian restaurant. It's on page 6. Mom emerged from the kitchen a few moments later, ostensibly to deliver my lunch, but really to check that I was working. I was distracted from my annoyance by the treat she held in her hand. Biryani poutine, my favorite. Hana beta, eat fast. Customers could come at any time, Merijan, she said, handing me the steaming plate piled high. My mother, Gufran Khan, was a curious combination of nurturing and stern. She delivered orders in sharp bursts, punctuated with Urdu endearments such as beta and Merijan, child and my life. I devoured the mixture of fragrant rice, marinated chicken, crispy fries, savory gravy, and cheese curds. Mom wrinkled her nose and hastily returned to the kitchen. Biryani poutine is an acquired taste, as in I was the only person who had acquired a taste for our restaurant's namesake dish. Biryani is a popular North Indian dish, a casserole made from basmati rice layered on top of meat or chicken marinated in yogurt, salt, fresh coriander, garlic ginger paste, and garam masala. The dish was topped with ghee and saffron and then baked. Poutine is a regional Canadian dish that first gained popularity in Quebec. It consists of fresh cut golden fries topped with rich savory gravy and fresh cheese curds. Biryani layered with poutine was a strange combination that, so far, appealed only to me, likely because I dreamt up the dish when I was 9 years old. My sister, brother-in-law, random strangers thought biryani poutine was disgusting. Eventually, Mom had to take it off the menu after our customers complained, though she still made it for me. It had stuck as a name for the restaurant, probably because Mom hadn't wanted to pay for a new sign. I put down the plate and popping in earbuds and cranking my favorite playlist, I began cleaning. After a few minutes, I picked up the plate to take another bite of my lunch, swiveling my hips to Taylor Swift's infectious pop and using my spoon as a microphone. Someone tapped me on the shoulder, and startled, I dropped my plate. Demonstrating lightning fast reflexes, the someone, a young man, I observed, saved my lunch from disaster. I took out my earbuds, and Taylor Swift's bouncing lyrics blared for a moment into the silence before I hastily swiped the app closed. The young man half smiled. Cute, I thought. Your meal? He asked, his tone deeply dubious as he handed back the plate. He looked to be about my age or older, wearing a black t-shirt and jeans. A pair of flashy sunglasses with reflective silver lenses dangled from his collar. His hair was dark and curly, and a smile twitched at the corners of his full mouth. A hint of stubble accentuated a square jaw and warm terracotta skin. Large, dark brown eyes regarded me from beneath thick black brows. Definitely cute. But I didn't appreciate the questioning lilt at the end of that sentence, or the way the older man standing behind him wrinkled his nose at my lunch. What is that? The older man asked. Despite the salt and pepper hair and the deep frown lines etched into his cheeks, the resemblance between the two was clear. Father and son, I concluded. Biryani poutine, I answered, offended. Only available on the VIP menu. So that's from Hana Khan Carries On. And it's the first time that Hannah meets the love interest, Aiden. And because I'm a sucker for enemies to lovers, they hate each other in the beginning. And then, of course, sparks fly. Okay, so we are going to move on to the next story, which will be presented by my friend, my other writer friend, Huda Fehmi. Very excited about this. Huda is hilarious and awesome. She is the author and illustrator of the webcomic series, Yes, I'm Hot in This. And it is so funny, Huda. You make me laugh all the time. And the books, she's also the author of the books, Yes, I'm Hot in This, and The Hilarious Truth About Life in a Hijab. And also That Can Be Arranged. I think I have a copy of it on my bookshelf behind us, which is a Muslim love story. And her YAA debut, Who Da F Are You, will be out this fall. I got a sneak peek of this fantastic book, Huda. It's so, so amazing. You all need to buy it when it comes out. All right, Huda, over to you.
So Assalamualaikum. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for having me and congratulations on your book launch. It's so exciting. I did get to read an advanced copy and, oh, of course, right on time. I'm so sorry. And unlike Shannon, I actually took my time. I like to savor these books. I savored the book as I would my favorite dish of food. It was a very, oh my God, that story. Hana Khan Carries On is such a good, fun, it really is a quick read, but I really wanted to take my time. I would have to force myself to put it down to come back to it so that I could kind of like really let the characters just, live in my mind, and I have to wonder what's going to happen next. And it was just a very, very fun read. And I love that it was centered really around the food, because food has such it is so universal, and it is so important to so many cultures. And I'm surprised, honestly. I'm not saying this that these kind of stories don't exist, but I haven't read one. This might be the first book that I read where there's so much food involved, and I love it. And it was really a great way to connect these characters, from enemies to lovers, and it was such a wonderful connection. I think you guys are gonna love it. Definitely gonna love it when you read it, inshallah. So when Uzma asked me to do this, she said, okay, I was hoping that you guys would share some stories about food. And I was like, I got it. I know the exact story I'm going to tell. I didn't have to think about it. This is, it's a story that I to this day, every time I eat my favorite dish, I remember the story and I laugh to myself. So I got married about 10 years ago. And before I lived in Michigan, and my husband lives in Texas. So I was going to move down to Texas, and I wanted to make sure the only dish I asked to be taught how to make before I left was mloukhiyeh. And I am Egyptian and Syrian of descent, and mloukhiyeh is a very popular dish all over the Middle East. It is prepared in so many different ways. And within my own culture, like it's prepared differently in Egypt than it is in Syria. And the best way that I could describe what mloukhiyeh is, it is a green plant that when you cut it up, it becomes this very slimy texture. And the way that Egyptians prepare it, mloukhiyeh, is very soupy and it's like very slimy. Like you get this really elastic kind of texture, and I love it. It's my favorite food in the entire world is mloukhiyeh. The way that Syrians prepare it, it looks more like spinach, a kind of slimier spinach. And it's not really my favorite. I'm not really a big fan of that. But there's so many different ways that you could prepare this dish. So my Egyptian grandmother, who happened to live in Michigan at the time, was there, and I asked her to just sit with me for a day and just teach me how to make mloukhiyeh. It's the only dish I need to learn how to make before I move to Texas and possibly never learn how to make this dish again. And so she sat there with me and she makes it fresh. Like she grows the stuff and gets the leaves fresh and she chops it and she does this amazing, and I'm sitting there just taking notes as she goes by, and I'm drawing pictures next to each note. And you know, moms and grandmas don't really give you exact measurements. So she's like, you need to fill the pot this much. I'm like, what is that? How many cups is that? No, just this much. So I had to like draw a picture of a pot and measure like of the pot that she had and just put a line and point this much to how much of the broth was supposed to go in. Anyway, so she does it, she teaches it to me, and I moved down to Houston and I love it and I make it all the time. And it actually turns out that my husband hates it. It's like his number one, he hates this dish. It is his number one worst dish that he absolutely hates. And I was like, great, more for me. And I will make it and I will make him something else. And I will eat it all for myself because that's how much I love mloukhiyeh, and I was so happy that he didn't like it. Anyway, so I told my friends that, I told one of my friends in Houston, oh, I love mloukhiyeh. And she's like, oh, you know, I was going to go over to her house in San Antonio. And she was like, my mom will make you the best mloukhiyeh. And I was like, okay, awesome. That's great. I can't wait. When we drive, and this is like a 4-hour trip to San Antonio from Houston, and I'm in anticipation of this delicious mloukhiyeh. I cannot wait. And her mom is Palestinian, and I was like, oh my God, it's gonna be like authentic, you know, really, really great food. And we get there, and I was like, what the heck is this? This is not mloukhiyeh. So like I said, it was prepared completely differently. I'd never had Palestinian mloukhiyeh before. There were like tomatoes in it. I'd never had that before. And I was just like, this is, you know, of course I'm never going to say no to, you know, somebody else is offering me food. And I ate it, but I was really like, not, in addition to the tomatoes, there was some other strange flavor that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I didn't know what it was, but I was like, this is not, I don't know what this is, but okay, you know, and I just finished eating it. It was not good. Anyway, fast forward, I was going to visit a friend of mine who happened to be Egyptian, and she is like, hey, come over, I'm going to be making mloukhiyeh. And I was like, yes, finally, something I know with somebody who's Egyptian. And so I'm watching them prepare this food, the mloukhiyeh, and they suddenly take out cilantro and garlic, and they start frying it in the frying pan. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, what is that? What are you doing? And why are you putting, what's that? Like, she's like, it's cilantro, it's garlic, we fry it up, we put it in the mloukhiyeh. I was like, no, we've never done that. Like, what are you talking about? That's wrong. Is that like some specific family tradition? Like, that's not how you make traditional Egyptian mloukhiyeh. And she's like, yeah, Hada, that's like, mloukhiyeh is not mloukhiyeh without kizbera and garlic, like without cilantro and garlic. And so I was like, whatever, like this girl is, you know, all right. And so I'm convinced that my way is the only way. And so I ended up going back to Michigan to visit my grandma one day. And I'm like, sit down. I need to tell you this crazy story. There's this girl, she claims she's Egyptian. This is how she makes mloukhiyeh. So I go through her recipe, and then I was like, now get this. She adds cilantro and garlic. And I'm waiting for my grandma to be like, you know, that's the climax. And she's just like, yeah, and I'm like, what do you mean? And that's wrong. That's not what I pull out. I had taken a picture of the recipe I'd written. I was like, see, that's not in the recipe we went through. And she's like, Huda, you don't remember I remember, it was 10 years by this point. It's been 10 years. And she's like, you specifically told me you don't want cilantro or garlic in your mluchiyah because you don't like, I put garlic, but mixed it, fried and stuff. She's like, you don't like cilantro in your mluchiyah. We made it without cilantro for you. But mluchiyah is not mluchiyah without the cilantro and garlic. And my whole, my mind shook. I had to like, I was like, my jaw was on the floor like, no, what are you talking about? And I felt so ashamed. Like I had to go back to my friend and really, I don't think I even apologized. I have to go, I'm telling it now and I'm like, did I even apologize? I don't know. But yeah, and so I was shook. I was just, my whole world was upside down. It's just this food that I loved. And I realized I'd been preparing it wrong this whole time. In my opinion, it's the only right way without the, cilantro and the garlic. But I've found, obviously that it's not the right way, but it will remain the right way to me. And so ever since then, it's now, it's still how I make mluchiyah. You better believe if you come to my house and I make you mluchiyah, there will be no cilantro fried with garlic in that mluchiyah. And it's still going to be delicious and you're going to love it. Or if you're my husband, you'll hate it, but that's okay. I'll have more for me, like I said. And that is my food story that has kind of, spanned 10 years in the making. But I hope you found it funny and know that, sometimes even the way that you make food, there's always going to be something lost a little bit, I guess, in the translation or in the way you make it. It just kind of becomes something new and yeah, and it's wonderful. And also maybe take something for my memory that I should improve my memory, because as soon as my grandma told me that story, it was like a memory was unlocked. I was like, oh yeah, that does sound like that. Anyway, okay, so I'm gonna open the chat to see who's gonna be the first. Oh, by the way, I love cilantro on this, like by itself, like in my guac and in like pico and stuff like that, but just in my mluchiyah, it does not belong in my mluchiyah. But anyway, so let me ask a question. It's just gonna be a quick question. And the question is, what was added in the Palestinian mluchiyah? Oh, wait, stop, one person, yikes. That was, okay, hold up, I'm going up. And that was Urusa Ali. Urusa Ali got the first, she got it, tomatoes. That went way too fast. Urusa Ali, I don't know if the moderator got it, but that is who it was. So congratulations on that. And thank you so much again, Uzma, for having me and for listening to my story, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thanks, Hoda. That was awesome. I love that story. Especially, and I was gonna say, if you don't like cilantro, I'm sorry, but we cannot be friends because I put cilantro in everything. Everything, like even if it doesn't belong there, I just put cilantro and garlic in everything. The first thing you do when you start cooking as an Indian woman is you chop the tomato, take out the adrak listen, and then put the adrak listen, which I get from my mom who makes it at home. Anyways, thank you for that awesome story. And I forgot to mention Shannon, who shared her amazing story about spaghetti and meatballs, has written an amazing Daevabad trilogy. If any of you have not read it, you have to buy a copy of it. I have City of Brass, Kingdom of Copper, and Empire of Gold is the third book. So it just came out recently and it is fantastic. Okay, we're moving on to the next portion. I'm actually really worried about this one. So my friend Uzma Jalaluddin has come up with some questions and I'm really worried because she said she's going to roast me. So I have no idea what the questions are. I wanted them to be a surprise, but she's going to ask me some Q&A. But before we get into that, Uzma Jalaluddin, hey Uzma, holds a PhD in international human rights law with a specialization in military intervention and war crimes in the Balkans. She writes the award-winning Isa Katak Rachel Getty mystery series and the critically acclaimed Khorasan Archives fantasy series. A Deadly Divide and The Blade Bone are her latest books, and her new Blackwater Falls crime series premieres in 2022. Uzma is a fantastic author, a really good friend of mine. You all need to read A Deadly Divide and you all need to read her Khorasan Archives. I was reading The Blade Bone, an early copy of The Blade Bone on a train, and I was just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. It was amazing and wonderful. So Uzma, I'm worried. I don't know what you're gonna ask me and you're a crime writer, so I'm very worried. Be gentle. All right, let's do this.
Oh, no, I cannot promise to be gentle, but salam everyone, and thank you so much for coming. It's great to be here with you, and it's especially great to be here to support Uzma in the launch of Hana Khan Carries On. I had the pleasure and privilege of reading it myself so many times because Uzma and I are critique partners, and one of our favorite things to do is to critique each other's romance scenes. And for me, it's always me pushing Uzma and saying, I need more, this isn't enough, they have to at least touch. And Uzma surprisingly does the same for me with my books too, because we know I have a fascination with brooding sexy men. And then we have Sajda in our group as well, who's like sort of checking both of us and saying, that's too much, that's too far, take a step back. Remember who you are, remember who your audience is. So we have a lot of great fun, but I loved the romance and the light touch, of course, in Hana Khan Carries On. I'm madly in love with Aiden, but slightly more madly in love with Khalid from Aisha at Last. But I also love the way that Uzma writes about such deep themes like our experiences of Islamophobia, because when Uzma and I and Sajda first became friends and formed our little writers critique group, we were roughly all getting published at the same time. We had never known any other Muslim writers in our communities, and it was just fantastic to have this group of friends that then expanded to include people like Shan and many others who had all the same life experiences as us and who intimately knew what it felt like to experience the many different forms of Islamophobia. And to be able to talk about that with a light hand and yet with such depth and complexity, I think is one of the great and beautiful strengths, both of Aisha at Last and Hana Khan Carries On. So if you haven't read these two fantastic Muslim romance novels with amazing meet cutes and one of my favorite romance scenes of all times, I strongly encourage you to get out there and pick up both these books. So I thought I would have some fun with Uzma and then have fun with all the writers and all of you by doing this kind of a hot seat question period.
Oh, God.
And so we know that Uzma has two very hot male heroes in her books, Khalid and Aisha at Last, and Aiden in Hana Khan Carries On. So I thought I'd ask some questions about them and about Uzma's writing process, and then some about Aisha and Hana. But first up, it's kind of a general round where I'm giving Uzma the opportunity to talk for about, say, 30 seconds, but then comes the sudden death round where it's like one word answers and she's got to give it to us fast. And then if everyone would just turn on their cameras for the last question, I thought I would ask it of all the writers here because it'd be fun to talk about the characters you all create. All right, Uzma, first up, Smarty, which male protagonist would plan a better vacation, Khalid or Aiden, and what are each of their vacation styles?
Oh, God. Okay, so Aiden comes from quite a wealthy family, so I feel like he would have had more access to like maybe luxurious vacations than Khalid, but I feel like Khalid has this like really earnest romantic streak in him that has been suppressed by his beard for so long. It's like, and so, you know, sometimes when that kind of guy gets married and falls in love for the first time, it's like, boom, you know, all of a sudden everything comes out. So I don't know. I want to say Aiden for the style, but Khalid for the authenticity. And you told me not to equivocate, so I'm going with Aiden. Aiden, all the way.
Okay, but where are they taking their beloved?
Aiden's going to take Hannah somewhere like classy, like, I don't know, Europe. And Khalid is going to take Aisha for Hajj.
Perfect. I totally see that happening. You mentioned Khalid's beard, and Uzma told me I was not allowed to ask the question I had on my list, which was, what is it like to kiss a man with the beard? So I won't ask that question, but I want you to know I was thinking about asking that question. Okay, question number 2. We know, Uzma, that you're deeply in love with your husband. So who resembles him more, Aiden or Khalid, and in what way?
Oh my goodness, this is such a good question. I should have asked for these in advance. I think Imtiaz is a little bit like Khalid and a little bit like Eden in various ways. So I think he's a lot like Khalid because Khalid is very thoughtful and my husband is also thoughtful, kind and romantic. And Imtiaz can be quite romantic. He's probably turning red right now. And Aiden has this kind of grumpy charm to him, and he's also someone who is very responsible. So I don't know, I find a responsible man is something that's kind of attractive. So I think that has something to do with him. But I think Aiden's sense of humor is more along the lines of Imtiaz's sense of humor too.
It's nice when you have inspiration right in your own home, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so turning it back to the women, they're both a bit prickly and deeply in their heads. So who would plan a better date with her soulmate, Aisha or Hannah? And keep in mind that I think Aisha and Khalid had the best date of all time, sipping Slurpees in the parking lot.
Who would plan a better date? I feel like poets are just really good at like paying attention to detail, and Aisha is like a slam poet in Aisha at Last. So I feel like I think Aisha would plan a better date. Hannah, on the other hand, is a broadcaster in training and is also paid to be observant and is trained to be observant. So that might be something that they're both really good at. But I feel like Aisha is probably she edges out Hannah in terms of creativity, and she's a little bit older, so that might play into it too. So I'm going to go with Aisha.
Okay. All right. So, most of these questions, I had prepared a list, and then my 24-year-old niece looked them over and she was like, good God, no, what are you, 100 years old? We have to have some fun questions on this list. So keep in mind, I want to credit my niece Summer for helping me with this. And the next question is definitely hers. So Uzma, you're at a dinner party of hot young singles. Where are Aiden and Khalid, and what are they doing to fit in?
Oh my God. Well, Khalid is giving everyone a lecture and inviting everyone to come to halakha, obviously.
Of course.
Aiden is trying to figure out, who's the best person to kind of network with, because he's very aware of his halal food empire and he wants to, have contacts. He's probably passing out business cards and flyers and things like that. So they're schmoozing, but for different ends.
So neither of them have game, is what you're telling us. All right. Who do you see yourself more in, Aisha or Hannah, and why?
I think I see myself more in Hannah, more than Aisha. I know this is strange because Aisha is a teacher. I'm a teacher, and she has that whole like thing of like, should I remain in my job as a teacher because this is something that is a career, and it's something that I've thought about as well. I love teaching, unlike Aisha, but Hannah, on the other hand, I identify with her yearning for something and being on the cusp of adulthood, that real transition when you're done school and you're about to leap off into life, whatever life is in your 20s and 30s, and feeling scared and terrified, wanting to make your mark, not knowing how to embrace your ambition. So I think I relate more to Hannah at that time. So it was fun to write her, but Hannah is also a lot braver than I think I was at that age, and she's also a lot more feisty, which I love. So I don't think I was as self-confident at that age. Hannah was so much fun to write for those reasons.
I love that about her too. I love her personality and her, no nonsense opinions about things, and the way she takes on her podcast. And Uzma and I have talked in the past about ambition. And if you want to hear Uzma talk a lot more about what it's like to manifest ambition in your life as a girl or a woman from a South Asian background, tune into our conversation at Indie Fest in a week. But here's the last question from the general round. Of your 4 lead characters, which one would be the list maker? And what is on the list?
Oh my God. Okay, so Asma and I are always making lists, and then we take pictures of our lists and send them to each other just so we can feel like we've accomplished something, and then we cross things out. Where's my list? I always have, Sajida actually gave me this notebook years ago, and I have lists. Who would be more of a list maker? Aisha, for sure. Hands down. She's the list maker, definitely. Hannah, I feel like, is more like fly by the seat of your pants kind of person.
All right, cool. So now we're on the sudden death round. So answer with only one word or a name if it's a name question. And then reminder to everybody, when I get to the last question, please turn your cameras on. Okay, Uzma, who knows how to use power tools? Aiden or Khalid?
Khalid.
Okay, who solves their problems by throwing money at them? Aiden or Khalid?
Aiden.
Who forgets birthdays and then grovels on their knees? Aiden or Khalid?
Aiden.
Who's a mama's boy? Aiden or Khalid?
Khalid.
That took no thinking about. Who's going to have a bigger shadi or wedding? Aiden or Khalid?
Aiden.
Who thinks the ultimate honeymoon destination is Disneyland? Aiden or Khalid?
Aiden.
Who would bring their mother on their honeymoon? Aiden or Khalid?
Probably neither. But if I had to pick someone, maybe Khalid, if they
I think Khalid might do it.
yeah, if they reconciled.
Okay. Who finishes the cookies and then puts the empty box back in the cupboard?
Khalid.
Who thinks oatmeal cookies are the only way to roll when chocolate chip is right there?
Khalid.
Who leaves only an inch of milk in the carton and puts it back in the fridge?
Aiden.
Okay, who's fighting off more chicks and has better game? Aiden or Khalid?
Oh, Aiden.
Hey, what's happening here? Aiden's kind of like dominating. Okay, I think this one might go the other way. Who was always picked last for a sports team? Aiden
Khalid.
or Khalid? Okay, here's a weird one. Shan's gonna like this. Who would cross themselves if they were Catholic? Aiden or Khalid?
Oh, Khalid.
And here's a question that's personally very important to me, considering that I sort of temporarily own 4 cats. Who is a cat person? Aiden or Khalid?
I think Khalid is.
Yeah, I think so too. Who thinks a big chunky medallion and a leather jacket with zippers is the ideal fashion statement? Aiden or Khalid?
Aiden.
Okay, in front of you, you have 2 headscarves. One is a leopard print and one has pink polka dots. Who picks the polka dots, Hannah or Aisha?
Aisha.
Aisha, okay, cool. When her mother wants her to do something that she doesn't want to do, who has the most creative excuse, Hannah or Aisha?
Oh, this is a good one. I think Hannah.
Okay. How many proposals has Hannah turned down?
She's 24, so probably not, probably, I would say 0 at this point.
Okay. How many proposals have you turned down?
7?
That's good. That's nice. Okay, so final question now for you and for all the authors, if they can put their cameras back. We'll do like a round. I'll ask everyone in turn, waiting for the ladies to remember that they're on with us. Here's Heather, where's Shan, where's Saj? Okay, just waiting on Saj. Okay, perfect. So the last question, let's start with you, Uzma, and then after you, I'll ask Huda. So I think a lot of you, like me, suffer from the same disease, which is we tend to fall in love with our characters. So Uzma, which one of your characters, male or female, have you fallen in love with and which book are they in?
Okay, Khalid will always be my OG, my everything, my first, my first fictional character. And I think out of the female characters, I really love Coca Khala. She's a favorite, and of course Hannah's a lot of fun.
All right, great. Huda, your turn.
I obviously, my husband's a major character and I love drawing him and I love having him. So, and I'm in love with him in real life. So that's that. But I also, I love my mom. I love the character of my mom and I love the stories that, that inspire the comics that come with her. So for sure.
Beautiful answers. Shan, your turn.
This is a scary question for me to answer.
I know, you're in a real
Don't
dilemma
say
because
my
you've
email.
got your diehard fans there.
I am going to take the coward's but honest way out and say the character I love most is Nahri. Just because I wrote a lot about my own insecurities and trying to belong and find a path through life. So I love her. Although, you know what? It's been 6 months. If I have to pick between the men,
I want to hear this.
I like Ali. He's a good man. He's a good Muslim. He's trying to do his best. I like people who are willing to, like really just change society and justice and challenge things. And even if that's kind of reckless, I think that's the way in life to be. So that's my answer.
Oh, that's a great answer. I absolutely love that. I love Ali too. Oh my gosh, he's irresistible. What about you, Sajda?
So for me, there's only one. Well, actually, you know what? In my mind, I was like, first salam, everyone. There's only one, Adam. But I also love Khalid from Aisha at Last. So
Sorry, you're in love with somebody else's character.
I love, Asma and I, we used to always give little hints about Khalid before Aisha at Last came out. And yeah, he's somebody that I fell in love with as soon as I read. But for my own books, it would be Adam.
Oh yeah, Adam is such a sweetheart.
him.
Who couldn't love him? But tell us what book he's from. And tell us about the book too,
Oh yeah, he's from Love from A to Z.
which came out last year, right?
No, 2 years ago.
2 years ago, pandemic time. I'm losing time all the time. And thank you, Saji, so much. I love him too. He's so sweet. And from my books, it's a real toss-up because I was really in love with my detective Isa Khatak for a long time. But then I've spent like 4 years in the Khorasan archives where there's a lot of really hot male characters, and it's always a struggle for me to pick who am I in love with. Sometimes I think it's the lead male character, Danyar, but he might be just a little bit too good, too noble. So I like a devil like the Black Khan Rukh a little bit more, but I also kind of like Arsalan because he's also good, but he doesn't pull any punches. So that's my answer. And thank you so much, ladies. It was great hearing all of yours. And I'm going to turn it back over to Uzma now.
Asma, that was awesome. Thank you so much. And you did go easy on me. I appreciate it. So we're going to end off with Sajda. Sajda is going to share a food story in a minute. I just wanted to introduce her first. So Sajda has been such a huge supporter of my books. You know, she's the reason she kept pushing me to finish Aisha at last, which had a different title back then. And so she played such an instrumental role in mentoring me and supporting me. And so for all you hopeful writers out there, find yourself a Sajda and you can't go wrong. So S.K. Ali is an award-winning and New York Times bestselling author of several books, including Love from A to Z and the upcoming Misfit in Love, which I'm so excited about. It is a sequel, follow-up to her first novel, which was Saints and Misfits. She's also contributed to various anthologies. I think I have one above me on the shelf, which is Once Upon an Eid. All right, Sajda is going to share with us a food story, and then we're going to wrap up. So do the final giveaway as well. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much, Uzma. That was such a nice introduction, and really it's a great segue into my food story, actually. So I'm so excited to be here to support Hana Khan Carries On, which I fell in love with when I read it in its first drafts. There's so many fantastic, lovable characters. Kaukab, yes, needs a book of her own. Uzma is gifted at creating a warm, happy experience for readers, and we're so lucky to have her books in our lives. And so my food story actually features Uzma. So Uzma and I have been writing friends for a long time, and often through daily phone calls, share daily frustrations of writing while momming and juggling careers. So we shared dreams of having a room of our own where we could write uninterrupted. And one year we actually made that happen by going away to a cottage together for a few days. The problem was that the cottage was in a very pretty place with lots of distractions and involved us cooking meals once in a while. But we did like the experience of having this like writing space with no one around. So then enter the idea of choosing a boring location to hold our writing retreats in. And apologies to anyone from London, Ontario, but we chose London, Ontario. We literally stabbed a finger on a location while scrolling Google Maps, and we decided to book hotel rooms in the middle of nowhere, we thought, surrounded by industrial buildings, and because we wanted to just focus on writing. And that's where my food story comes in. So our plan was to meet for dinner every night after writing, locked away in our rooms. And then we were gonna walk to a restaurant nearby or drive not too far. And we discovered that this obscure location was actually a foodie dream. Within a short distance was an amazing Vietnamese restaurant, an authentic sushi place, a traditional fish and chips place with like, you know, all the traditional kind of like English stuff around. And there was even a big, huge Tim Hortons, which, you know, Canadians know always used to be nearby. So meeting her for dinner, for Uzma for dinner every night for a week made me realize that Uzma was meant to write Hana Khan Carries On. So we'd had dinner before, of course, but that week I started to like pay attention to how Uzma eats. And Uzma loves food and eats with gusto and a palpable joy and passion, and with sounds and facial expressions. And it's such an experience to eat with Uzma. On top of having our rooms to write in, that was one of the joys of the week. After that first year, we continued our writing retreats and trying really hard to include Asma, but she was like, London, Ontario. So, she was like, what about some more exciting location? But so we left her out of our boring but food heaven location to hold our writing retreats. And I got to enjoy watching Uzma eat and understand that Uzma is the perfect author for such a perfect foodie story. Hana Khan Carries On with its delicious descriptions of food. And when you get the book, please make sure you've got some yummy food nearby, because you're not going to be able to just read. You're going to have to eat while reading. And make sure you eat with gusto like Uzma does. So my giveaway question is, what were the types of restaurants I mentioned that was nearby to our boring writing location? Okay, so oh my gosh, somebody's answering all of them. Okay, if you can name it all, then okay. Vietnamese, sushi Vietnamese, fish and chips, Tim Hortons. I think somebody had all of them. And yeah, okay, so it's Minha Khan that got the right answer. Handing it back to Uzma. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me here.
Sajida, thank you for sharing that story. That was really awesome. We have to go on another writing retreat again. I remember the first one, she was finishing Saints and Misfits. The second one, I was finishing Aisha at Last. The third one, I was working on Hana Khan. She was working on Love from A to Z. So that little London hotel, that it was a lot of stuff was accomplished. And so everyone, I think this is it. Alice, are we going to just share details of how people can buy the books? Hopefully on the chat. And yeah, so I think what I will just say is thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you for signing up. To my writer friends, I really feel such a sense of community with you all. Some of us we've only met really and talked on Twitter or on Instagram. But you all mean so much. Thank you for all the participants today. I can see the chat just been going on. It's been awesome. Please do support Hana Khan Carries On. Please do support Huda's books, Sajida's books, Shannon's books, Asma's books. We are all hopeful writers, and we really rely on the support of our friends and our family and our fans. So thank you so much for everyone for coming out. And I just want to make sure that I can see what some of my students, my former students. Hi, everyone. And yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone has access to these books. So where everyone can buy it, Belmont Books, as well as Ben McNally in Canada, Belmont Books in the United States. So I think that is it. Alice, I don't know if you're going to just pop back in and tell everyone. Otherwise, I think we are good.